Hello, it's Mike from Dimensional Walking. Today I'm going to do a video on UFO crash that crashed in Arizona. I think it was like 1953. Some people call it the Kingman crash, even though I believe it was outside of Kingman, but it had something to do with Kingman for sure. And anyways, I just want to give a little credit out. A lot of information that I did research on, plus I will tell you some of my own personal research I did and talking to people in the area. There was a person that wrote a really pretty good article on this, and her name was I don't know if it's a he, but the person's name was um, Venunia Boyle. Okay, hopefully I pronounced that first name correctly, but I'm not sure if it's male or female. But important thing is, I'm giving her a little credit. That I'm giving that person a little credit. Sorry, I'm making an assumption. That person some credit. Anyways, so there was this UFO crash. I think I said May in 1953, and apparently there was some leaked documents in the mix. Okay, so it said basically that I guess the bottom line was the U.S. had seized this UFO and it crashed outside of Kingman, and it was on route close to Route 66, according to the conversation. The visitors apparently there was the witnesses, and there were several of them. Claimed that this thing kind of just tumbled out of the sky and slammed into the desert just east of Kingman. And so there's this guy that has written quite a bit about it. His name is Danette, and he believes that there was actually more to the story. Okay, so he had been this particular Danette guy. He was investigating UFOs since 1986, and this is one of the ones that he liked to really look at. He alleged that it seemed to be pretty legit, and it was also called Paradise Valley Crash. Okay, apparently there's a place called Paradise Valley there. Actually, I know there's a place called Paradise because I've been to Paradise. Now I think about it, it must be a valley that goes because I used to go over there when we used to visit Sedona out that way, north of Phoenix, of course. So the reality is this particular crash, and I'm sure most of you that are listening to me have heard of it. But outside of it isn't as famous as the Roswell crash, and there's some other crashes that's not as famous. But I still think it's pretty important, and I'll tell you later why. But Danette believes that this Bennett guy believes that it's probably one of the top five crashes, UFO crashes. So, and it's very rare because it had these multiple witnesses, which is unusual. Um, anyways, there's many researchers, somewhat including myself, that seem like the story is a little bit different than what I personally heard from a little bit of research I did. But generally speaking, it happened around Kingman, and there was multiple witnesses, etc. And as far as the government grabbing it, I'm not too sure about that. But yeah, it's an interesting story. Let's continue. So some of the theories go is that maybe the reason this UFO crashed, first of all, was that there was some nuclear test close by that maybe caused some kind of a strange wave or something in the environment that actually caused these this UFO to crash, um, or maybe even unstable gravitational field lines, or maybe some powerful radar. Now, the powerful radar one is one that I would kind of jump on. And one of the reasons I would is because I really believe that the crashes in New Mexico during the late 1940s were actually caused by some powerful radar that the government had found or accidentally found that would bring some UFOs down. Okay. So, anyways, I think I'm leaning towards the radar angle, and maybe it was done intentionally, maybe it was not done intentionally, maybe it's just a radar they were using, and it just happened to bring it down under the right environmental conditions. Interesting. Another interesting thing was that there's a research center apparently. I have never been there, Mojave Museum of History and Arts off of Route 66, that has a whole section devoted to the UFO crash in Kingman. Um, and apparently, there is some redacted information there that alleges this government information that alleges that some more detail of the crash. So supposedly, there's a guy named Fritz Warner who I guess goes by different names. I don't. Apparently, Fritz Warner is not his real name. Uh, Stanislaus, I guess, is another name that he goes by, but it isn't really that important. And apparently, this Stanislaus guy, uh, you know, talked about quite a bit of what actually happened here. So the reason this Stanislav guy is important is because he was an Air Force engineer who studied the impact of nuclear blasts, which is again one of the possible theories why this or what caused this UFO to crash. And because this guy was an expert on what nuclear blasts caused, what type of damage it caused to buildings and homes, and so he was this guy apparently was one of 40 people that were taken in blacked out buses uh, to this site, somewhere's outside of Kingman. Okay. Now, I just want to make a comment about the blacked out buses. I had a friend, a past friend that, again, you're going to say, oh boy, here's a friend of a friend of a friend. But he was in the military. I absolutely know he was in the military. As I did a background check on him. He definitely was a military guy. He was a air traffic controller for the military. He had a lot of friends that were in the military that worked in all kinds of really strange places. Okay, and one of them talked about these blacked out buses, and these guys were taking two of his friends, two of my the guy that I hired, two of his friends were taken to Roswell in one of these blacked out buses. And I'll never forget they went into this big conversation with him about these blacked out buses that they were picked up in a certain place. I think the one guy came from Texas, another guy came from Colorado. They went to Roswell and they did whatever they did down there. Okay, so it's kind of interesting the blacked out buses because that just rang a bell. Um, and of course, these people were taken to Arizona, and they were told this is a secret project, and they couldn't, obviously tell anybody. Blah blah blah, top secret, all that good stuff. And when they got there, apparently they found that there was this craft that was stuck in the sand, and it was probably about 30 feet across, kind of a typical saucer shape. It was 14 feet high, which is, I guess the weird thing about it, now I think about it, is that isn't too typical. That's a little bit taller than a normal saucer, okay? Normal scout ship or whatever you want to call it. The width is not so bad, but the height is really weird. Okay, 14 feet high, and it's like half as high as it's wide. So that was a little strange. So, anyways, but it was probably looks sort of still like a saucer, kind of I hate to say it, but a pregnant saucer. So, anyways, so it was made of this uh, unfamiliar, they called it metal, I guess. And it apparently was in 20 inches. It must have had a landing that kind of slid, and it ended up about 20 inches of the craft were into the earth. Okay. But there didn't seem to be any kind of other damage. And there wasn't really any damage on apparently, the part of the craft that was in the ground. Everything looked fine. It was just in the ground. Okay. Um, so this guy, this Stanislav or Fritz or whatever his name was, his job was to basically calculate the speed, how fast it came down when it hit the ground. So he estimated, I guess it came down at 12. 1,200 miles per hour. Okay. So I don't know how important that is. It's pretty damn fast, but I guess if something was falling or there was some kind of a propulsion behind it, 1,200 miles would not be that bad. But there was probably no craft that could probably go that fast at that time. Okay. So the documents also these secret documents that were supposedly uncovered or leaked. It talked about a small dead body of a being of some sort. I think in the document they call it a man, but it doesn't sound like it was probably a man. And it was understood to be a pilot. It was described as being 4 foot tall and wearing a silver metallic suit. Okay. Um, so after the workers or the people that were brought in, the 40 people, conducted their studies, they piled back into the bus, and the document claims that the Air Force colonel who was heading up the operation made them, of course, swear to a secret oath or something that they wouldn't say anything. But I'm sure he told them that if you do, uh, bad stuff will happen to you. Okay. So, anyways, fast forward, I guess 2 decades later, this Stanislav or Fritz or whatever his name is signed some kind of affidavit claiming what he saw, basically that there's this UFO, etc. So, anyway, so he tells everything to everybody, I guess, and he's not afraid to do it for some reason now. Maybe he was on his deathbed, who knows? But then apparently somehow the uh, Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Intelligence, Christopher Mellon, released a redacted conversation between him and a person he calls a senior U.S. government member whose name was not disclosed. Okay. And apparently it came out of that. It claimed that people would be shocked if word got out about this leaked document, writing that the federal government had actually taken the UFO around Kingman, the Kingman UFO had actually taken it. So they scooped up I guess the word is from they scooped it up and they dragged it around to various military bases. And one I'm sure it was this. Well, actually, a couple of them are the ones that are in New Mexico, since they probably had something to do with the Roswell crash and analyzing the Roswell crash. So my guess is it went to Kirkland Air Force, Sandia Labs took care look at it, Los Alamos took a look at it, etc. Before it went to the other Army bases and stuff out east. Um, so apparently they looked at it. They and were really trying very hard to figure out what the hell happened and how the UFO works. In that case, they probably sent it up to Area 51, where they try to look at try to re-engineer it or whatever it took to figure it all out. So, anyways, um, this Danette believes that we're never really going to know what happened in Kingman unless the government admits it, and it's unlikely that's going to happen, which I agree, of course. Now, on a personal take on this, okay, I was on a flight from LA to Albuquerque, uh, and you got to remember I did a lot of flying during my career as a logistics specialist. And anyways, sometimes I would sit next to, people that work for aerospace companies. Sometimes I would sit next to ex-military law enforcement, people that I thought maybe have a little bit of a knowledge of some UFOs, right? So I always try to strike up a conversation that kind of led into the conversation about UFOs. So this one day I did, and I'm not sure. I think what happened was I found out this guy that was sitting next to me. He was a military guy or an ex-military guy that lived in the Kingman area, okay, or lived or came from the area. So I said, "Hey, I kind of remembered about the Kingman incident," and I asked him, "What do you know about it?" He says, "Well, I'll tell you this." And by the way, just so you know, I always make sure they knew that I had clearance. I have my badge with me usually, and I show it to them. because I found out if I tell people that, especially like, people that work for aerospace companies or ex-military, there always is a bigger comfort level once they know you have security or clearance of some sort, right? Okay. So typically, I did that and, I got some additional good information, right? So, anyways, so he said that he was aware of some strange UFO activity in the past around Kingman. And he said there was this, listen carefully to this. He said there was some presence there, but I really don't know what he meant by the word presence. I asked him, but he wouldn't tell me what he meant. He said, okay. He said it was still there and it was actively being watched by the government. Whatever this thing was, whatever this presence was, or whatever was going on in the Kingman area was still being watched by the government. That's basically all I could get out of him on that. He wouldn't say more. And sometimes when people say, I found out when sometimes people say too much, they suddenly just shut up. Okay, because I think they realize they said too much. Okay, so I also ran across other people. This is, again, not necessarily on an airplane, but just people because I lived in Arizona for a while. And when I found out, when I found out basically again that they lived in Arizona, north, that's especially the northwest part of the state where Kingman is, um, then I would always ask them again about the UFO activity, and many of them said there was, lots of UFO activity around that part of Arizona. And then also there was some of them actually talked about some MIB encounters they had in the area. And then there was another couple and would talk about some odd looking non-humans walking down the street in Kingman. Now, I didn't get a whole lot of detail here, but it's all kind of really adds up to some interesting stuff. There's no doubt in my mind. So I personally speculate, I'm speculating that there is something under the ground in the Kingman area, maybe right underneath the city. I don't know that. And I believe it's still active. Okay. So if you are from the Kingman area or know something about this crash, or saw some interesting creatures or entities walking down the streets in Kingman, and you would like to add to this conversation, please either add it to the comment section, to the platform you are watching. I guess this would be it would be either on YouTube, Reddit, or Facebook. Or put a comment on the regular YouTube video of this that you're watching. So, hey, listen, interesting stuff. So, thanks until we meet again. Bye bye.